Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue the wonderful book, The World's Greatest Ghost by Roger Moore, this time starting a brand new chapter, Chapter 7, and the theme associated with it is very interesting. So we've talked about throughout the past chapters about ghosts that are frightful, ghosts that are vengeful, ghosts that attack people and are otherwise dangerous. This one, though, has to do with more friendlier ghosts. In fact, it's to the point that there are ghosts that are either people that they know, like somebody from family members, or celebrities in other cases, or also even ghosts that end up becoming lovers. So it's pretty interesting to see this new angle when it comes to the world of ghosts and the world of spirits out there. So I'm going to present it here, at least with regards to part 1 of chapter 7. The title of it is Ghostly Friends and Lovers. There's a little subtitle as well on the bottom, which says, Hauntings do not have to be horrific. Understandable initial terror among those who confront the unknown can sometimes be replaced by gratitude, even friendship, once humans realize that the spooky specters that they have encountered mean no harm and are even anxious to help. Stars of the stage and screen are among those who have discovered that inexplicable apparitions can be amiable, affectionate, and even amorous. So there you go. That's at least a little tease associated with this chapter. So let's go ahead and let's start part 1 here, and then I'll give my own thoughts and opinions. Let me know what you guys and gals think. So the first title is The Spooky Chess Player, and here's what it says. Maurice Tillett was grotesquely deformed. A gentle giant, he was a professional wrestler with the soul of a poet. Highly intelligent, he could speak 14 languages. Tillett died in 1955. Yet 25 years later, American businessman Patrick Kelly claimed to have regularly played chess with him from beyond the grave. Years earlier, he and Kelly had often played chess in the businessman's home near Braintree, Massachusetts. During the game, Tillett often raised his terrible head, looked sadly at Kelly, and groaned, "How awful it is to be imprisoned in this body." Kelly said that once his friend Tillett's spirit was free of its heavy burden, he often returned to the chessboard and we played as before. The ghostly games began after Kelly bought an electronic computerized chess set. The businessman had always played out on his library desk, where a plaster cast of Tillett's death mask has stood for almost a quarter century. And so late one evening, the computer deviated from its program plays and used an 18th century opening invented by a French master, a play Tillett had used constantly. Kelly recalled, "I played out the game and next morning noticed that the computer was actually not plugged in. I thought nothing of it at the time, but a few weeks later, the computer suddenly used a similar opening, and again, it was not connected to any power supply. Kelly had electronic engineers check the system. They found the computer would operate without electricity so long as Tillett's desk mask was near. Puzzled, the businessman had the mask x-rayed for concealed electronic devices, but it was made of solid plaster. According to Kelly, the unplugged set would not operate for days at a time, indicating that Tillett's spirit was absent. Kelly says, "When I want a game, I set up the pieces without plugging the set in. If there's no response, then I know Maurice is not present. But often, in mid-game, the computer will play above its normal level, and I know that he has stopped by. I prove this by pulling out the plug, but the game still goes on." Tillett was born in France, but in his 20s developed acromegaly, a horrific disease which causes an uncontrollable growth of the bones. After coming to the United States, he became a wrestler. He died when he was 45, and Kelly firmly believed that his old friend's poetic spirit was finally allowed to roam free of its grotesque body. Next segment is titled Who Haunts Your Baby? Film Stars and Friendly Ghosts. So here's what it says. Many stars of stage and screen claim to have seen ghosts, but few can equal the uncanny experience that has haunted Telly Savalas. The actor, best known as the TV cop Kojak, was driving home from a friend's house in a remote part of Long Island, New York, in the early hours of the morning. Glancing at his dashboard, he noticed that the clock registered 9 a.m. He also noticed that the fuel gauge registered empty. He was in luck. The yellow lights of an all-night cafe filtered throughout the darkness. He pulled in, ordered coffee, and then asked the way to the nearest gas station. He was told to take the path that ran through the woods over at the back of the cafe and walk until he reached a freeway. Savala recalls, I was just about to set out when I heard someone ask in a high pitched voice if I wanted a lift. I turned and saw a guy in a black Cadillac. I thanked him, climbed into the passenger seat, and we drove over to the freeway. To my embarrassment, I had no wallet. It must have fallen out of my pocket, but the man loaned me $1. I insisted I must pay him back and got him to write his name and address on a scrap of paper. His name was Harry Aganis. The next day, Terry Savala looked up the Good Samaritan in the phone book, and a woman answered the call. Yes, Terry Aganis was her husband, but no, it was not possible to speak to him, for he had been dead for 3 years. Now, the actor's first reaction was shock. He came to the conclusion that there must have been some mistake, but he would not put the incident out of his mind. Eventually, he visited the woman, taking with him the piece of paper on which the stranger had written his name and address. And Savala said, when I showed her the paper, she was obviously deeply affected and told me that without doubt it was her husband's handwriting. I described the clothes the man had worn. She said those were the same clothes that Harry Aganis had been buried in. The famous actor and the widow sat and looked at each other for a long time, hardly daring to admit to themselves the implications of what had happened. Was Savalas helped by the ghost of Harry Aganis? He says, that was a case Kojak could not solve. I doubt if I'll ever be able to explain it. Roger Moore, famous as screen master spy James Bond, admits to being absolutely petrified by the experience he had of the supernatural. Moore had gone to bed one early night after a hard day's filming. He had been sleeping soundly, but suddenly woke up with a feeling that someone was in the room. He said, lying there with the light of the moon coming through the window, I saw a misty substance that's as near as I could describe it, floating across the bed. I was rigid with fright. When it disappeared, I looked at my watch and saw that it was precisely 2 a.m. The following night, he woke at exactly the same time and again saw the strange drifting mist move across his bed. I was not keen on going to sleep in that room again, I can tell you, but our home help, a devout Jehovah's Witness, told me to leave a Bible opened at the 23rd Psalm on my bedside table. Rather reluctantly, I agreed to do that and try one more night. It worked, and I never had the experience again. It is surprising how many famous stars live in haunted houses. Some have come to terms with their domestic ghosts. Others have fled in search of new property. Peter Sellers' ghost traveled with him. He was always sure that the great comic Dan Leno was his guiding spirit throughout life. Glenn Ford and his wife Cynthia have experienced strange goings-on in their Hollywood home. Sometimes at night there have been echoes of some long-gone party in their garden. Cynthia Ford says, there's laughter, as though someone had just told a joke, and then the clinking of glasses. Once when we went downstairs in the morning, all the garden furniture had been arranged in a circle. At least it's a happy manifestation. Once I even smelled cologne of a type that isn't made anymore, the sort that Valentino wore. Actress Elka Summer and husband Joe Hyams had no idea when they bought a Beverly Hills house that it was haunted. Soon after they moved in, they began to hear strange noises coming from the dining room after they had gone to bed. Any possibility of burglars or intruders was soon dismissed. The thumping, banging, and strange noises went on night after night, always in the same room. Then in the early hours of one morning, when they were both asleep, there was a frantic pounding on their bedroom door. Joe Hyams opened it to find no one there, but thick black smoke was billowing up the staircase. And so he rushed downstairs to find the dining room on fire. Elka Summers sought the advice of several mediums, and each one gave the same answer. Whoever that ghost was, it had probably set fire to the dining room as an act of mischief, then repented, and then decided to warn them. British actress Adrienne Posta had managed to live with her ghost for years. He's very friendly, she insists. The house has such a nice atmosphere that I would hate to leave it. Adrienne almost accepts the ghost as part of the family. She says sometimes he gets a bit agitated, then he crashes about and opens and closes doors. That's a nuisance, but not really frightening. The only time I got really annoyed was when he was persistently throwing open my bedroom door in the middle of the night. I was really beginning to suffer from lack of sleep and felt I had to do something about it. So one night I retaliated. I threw a book towards the door when it opened and gave him a piece of my mind, and so the pestering stopped. Another star who decided to tackle a household spirit was Chad Everett, famous for his role in the TV saga Centennial. His home on Hollywood Boulevard was haunted by poltergeists. When he and his wife Shelby arrived home after an evening out, they were greeted by lights flicking on and off all over the house. They were not particularly worried about this, but when the ghost became more and more boisterous, throwing things across the kitchen, upsetting furniture, and generally making itself a nuisance, Chad decided to take things in hand. He decided the only way to tackle the spirit was by treating it like a naughty child. He said, "One day I just stood in the middle of the kitchen while things were being hurled about and said firmly, 'I think you're a fool to waste so much energy. It is difficult enough to communicate, yet here you are wasting your precious energy just frightening us. You're just making yourself miserable. Settle down and don't do it again.'" And then it didn't. From that day on, the Everetts lived in peace, though they were always aware of that other presence. The actor says, "I like to think I gave the poor ghost some good advice." 2 stars, Vincent Price and Kim Novak, had startling experience that lasted only a few seconds, but which were never to be forgotten. Prince, master of the macabre, had his extraordinary glimpse of the unknown while flying from Hollywood to New York on November 15th, 1958. He was immersed in reading a classic French novel for most of the journey, but at one point glanced idly out the window. To his horror, he saw huge, brilliantly letters emblazoned across the cloud bank. They were spelling out the message, "Tyrone Power is dead." Prince admits it was a terrific shock. "I had to doubt my senses when I realized that nobody else on the plane appeared to have seen them, but for a few seconds they were definitely there, like huge teletype, lit up with blinding lights from within the clouds." And so when Price landed in New York, he was told that his close friend, actor Tyrone Power, had died suddenly a couple of hours earlier. Kim Novak's encounter with the supernatural was just as startling, but alarmingly physical. The lovely blonde actress was working on location in England, making the film The Armor Adventures of Moll Flanders at Chilham Castle in Kent, a 17th century house built around the keep of a Norman castle. One evening after filming, she was relaxing in her room playing records. She said, "I put on one of my favorite tunes and couldn't resist dancing to it. As I whirled around the room, I suddenly felt rather cold. A powerful force seemed to grab me around the waist. I was lifted on my feet and then slammed against the wall. That was all, but it was enough to make Kim turn off the record player and hurry in search of company." British singer Cilla Black feels protective towards her ghost. 4 times within a period of 7 years, she woke up in the middle of the night to find the figure of a young girl, no more than 16, standing by the side of her bed. She said, "When it first happened, in my drowsy state, I thought one of the children had come up to the bedroom, perhaps wanting a drink of water or being upset by a nightmare. The second time, I knew it was a ghost. She was so sweet, I didn't feel frightened. In fact, believe it or not, I quite liked her being there. She appears to be wearing a long dress, like a nowdy, and then just stays there, but she never looks at me. I've actually spoken to her, asked her why she has come back and why she can't find peace, but she never answers. She just floats away through the door." And then I'm going to showcase some little segments here that the chapters always enjoy having. One is titled Screen Spectre, and here's what it says. 2 British film starlets were scared out of their wits when they reported for work at a newly opened Bushy Film Studios in Hertfordshire. They saw a luminous blue aristocratic lady stalk across the darkened set. Locals later saw the spectre, recognized her as Lulu, the wife of Baron von Herkimer, whose country mansion once stood on the site of the studios. And then the next one is called Mystery Legionnaire, and here's what it says. A family in Nottingham, central England, fled their home after seeing and hearing strange things during the early 1970s. The man of the house, a lorry driver, and his daughter claimed to have seen a man in what seemed to be a foreign legion uniform. Psychic researchers who investigated recorded sudden curious drops in temperature, footsteps, loud screams, and then hysterical sobbing. Spiritualists at a seance concluded that the mysterious legionnaire was in fact the ghost of a young widow cleaner who had killed himself after being left paralyzed by a fall from his ladder. The unhappy spirit had fallen in love with the lorry driver's daughter. And then that's it. Let's go ahead and let's pause it here. Part 1 of chapter 7 ghostly friends and lovers. So let's talk about these experiences. Once again, another excellent chapter showcasing lots of examples. That's why I love this book here, because you always have multitude of examples to showcase from, whatever the theme is. Here in this case being friendly ghosts, celebrity ghosts, ghosts that are trying to do the right thing, etc. The first example was about a poor guy by the name of Maurice Tillett. Apparently, he ended up being born with a condition called acromegaly that ended up having uncontrollable growth of the bones throughout his body. Who knows how he looked like, but according to him, in his own words, he was quoting right before he died, he said how awful it is to be imprisoned in this body. So either way, whatever happened to him, he ended up passing away at 45. It didn't say exactly why he passed away, but shortly afterward, he decided to come back from the afterlife and in turn to do friendly things. Like in this case, it was playing chess with an American businessman by the name of Patrick Kelly. Apparently they played from before chess games, and now here you have him coming back to life, Maurice basically as a spirit, and then playing with the other guy's electronic computerized chess set. And what made things even more bizarre was the fact that at certain points that chess set was unplugged and yet it was still working. The guy even had it tested to check and see if there was some kind of malfunction or something inside the actual device, whatever it was that was causing it to malfunction, but nothing could be found. And then also he had the death mask associated with Maurice Tillett nearby, probably as a relic to make sure that he could remember his friends. But either way, he thought maybe something was left there to see if that was manipulating the chess set. But no, it was just completely made of plaster. So interesting story. A ghost that comes back to life to essentially continue playing the chess game that they enjoyed. And then the next story from Telly Savalas. I've heard of him. I've never seen any of his work. But apparently there he was on one late night running out of gas, going into a cafe, trying to find the nearest gas station. And then a helpful stranger decided to accompany him, like basically take him in his car to a gas station to get some gas, only to realize whenever he tried to pay the guy back and getting his name and address of where to do so, that the wife answered, mentioning that no, he passed away. Harry Aganis had been dead for more than 3 years. So now not only do you have a friendly ghost that is helping out, but it's a full body physical apparition to the point that it was actually driving a car, and Terry Savalas was in that same car. So how do you have a ghost that is able to manifest itself so physically that is able to drive a car in the real world? I mean, there's layers whenever you're thinking about something like that, because this could be one of the greatest examples of ghostly encounters yet. A ghost that is basically a human. That's how solid they were. And no one else at the restaurant thought otherwise, that they're thinking, what is this ghost doing here? All they thought it was a regular person. Terry Savalas thought it was a regular person as well. I mean, that's how much it was in terms of a real encounter. Crazy stuff. But in any case, those are the stories that I wanted to highlight here. Let me know what you guys and gals think about this chapter. It looks to be a very, very great chapter. Love to hear what your thoughts and comments are. All right, everyone. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.